Good morning, everyone. Namaste from New Delhi, and I am delighted that our guest today is a very special gentleman who's also my coach, I must say, and mentor in many ways. Prasad, namaste, and thank you for joining from California. I know it's a little late for you.
It's my pleasure, Vimal. It's wonderful
Thank
to be
you.
with you.
Thank you very much. Now, for our attendees, may I especially mention that Prasad is often referred to as a thought provoker, and I'm sure he'll talk a little bit about this. He's also the author of several blogs, articles, and also two books. From smart to wise, and the second one, you can be smarter and wiser, and I hope to hear him on these books also, which he's written. At the same time, Prasad has had a very lovely journey, first in India and then from India to California, to Silicon Valley, which is the heart of technology and whatever new is happening. So hopefully he's going to talk about that, his journey, and some of the learnings along the way. So, Prasad, how's everything with you? First of all, tell me about the lockdown times and how you are managing with the present days, and also something about your early journey from India to California.
Sure. The lockdown is going well. I'm actually enjoying really being quiet and being able to have a proper structure where I'm not always living out of suitcase, and I have a predictable times to do various things. And then right behind my house, there is a wonderful hiking trail. Not quite trail, it's a road, but actually there is not much traffic, and there is a water treatment plant at the end of the road. So I have a 4 mile, 4.5 mile walks on a regular basis. So, and then once a week, a grocery run, and I'm enjoying this time. So actually, I feel like it allowed me to do a lot of self-reflection. It allowed me to read some. So I'm happy with what's happening. And I was able to catch up on things which I wanted to learn as well around the world, if I might say.
Fantastic. Now, you're originally from Andhra Pradesh, right? So, what took you to California?
What took me? It's a couple of stops in between.
Uh-huh.
I did my master's in physics from Anantapur, Venkateswara University at that time. Ended up doing a PhD from IIT Madras with some amount of inter-institutional work with the IISc Bangalore. And that was a pretty interesting topic, and that allowed me to go to United States, first to Utah, Salt Lake City. I was a postdoctoral fellow, and then I was an assistant professor in University of Utah for a few years. While I was there, I got seduced by personal computers, which was in the very early stage. This is like early 1980s. I went to United States in 1981, and I ended up seeing these personal computers and got totally fascinated by them. And before I knew, I was spending more time doing variety of things around a Macintosh, which was a brand new computer. And that allowed me to do a lot of interesting articles and development work with personal computers. And then I was invited to come and work with Apple, first as
Oh,
a
okay.
consultant for a while, and then I got a full-time opportunity to do things that took me to California in 1987.
So that must be, you must be one of the first few pioneers within Apple, even forming the company and its products at
Um,
that time.
I wouldn't say I was a pioneer in farming of it, but I was in the first several, maybe I was in the first 3,000-4,000 employees. I think there
Hmm.
was, I mean, Gurcharan Sidhu was one Indian who was there, who was a pioneer, and he was ahead of me. But other than that, I think in terms of being an Indian, I may be the second or third Indian who was in Apple
Okay.
Computer. And it was early enough, especially in 1983, 84 through 85, Steve Jobs was still there. And then from 85 onwards, he moved on. And then John Scully was the head till 1990. So I had a lot of fun working with Apple, both as a consultant while I was in University of Utah, then as a full-time employee. I think it was really a point that helped me to learn a lot and change my direction a lot.
So on call today, there are a lot of youngsters who obviously, Steve Jobs is like a guru in himself. What were those early years, and any message or learnings from those early years with working with Steve Jobs?
While my interactions with Steve were a few and far in between, but still there are large number of things that Steve is a bigger than life, and he continues to influence not only Apple but entire technology industry now 10 years after he died also. While he was alive, he was a mercurial personality
Mhm.
and incredibly brilliant, because he always went for the simplest solution. Just to give an example, like sometime when Apple was still designing some tools and he had come back for the second time after the next uh, got reacquired by Apple, some people were sitting in a room and trying to decide on how to represent a CD drive, and then how to insert the CDs, how to remove the CDs, how do you create an icon for it, what would be animation motion.
Mhm.
And there was a lot of research that was going on. Steve walks by, he sees what's going on from the windows out there. He just comes in, sits for a minute, and then just draws an image of a CD drive on the whiteboard. And he just says, just like a floppy disk, you put the floppy disk, you put the CD, and when you want to eject the CD, you just take that CD image and put it into the trash can. But for some people, it was anathema. How can you just throw the CD drive into that? He said, look, guys, we're just working with metaphors. Don't get paralyzed in trying to make metaphors into reality while you forget the reality and turn it into a metaphor. So it was like amazing for him. He just straight goes to the solution, and he had an uncanny ability to connect with people. So for youngsters, what I would say is you need to have clarity on what are you doing and why are you doing it. What is the sankalp? What is the intention behind why you are doing it? Never lose touch with why are you doing that part, because what and how can change a lot. But if you don't know why you are doing it, you can get locked into going in circles. That happens a lot, whether it's a job, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a career. We lose touch with why are we in that company, why are we in that relationship in the first place. So that is one thing which I find very, very useful thing that I learned from Steve.
I think that's very interesting to try and answer the question why you're doing what you're doing, and it could be on a day-to-day basis or whatever. But that's important. Uh, so, what started your or triggered your journey on leadership, and then the whole research you've been doing on leadership and connecting India with the Western thought?
There were a couple of thoughts which come to my mind on how I turned into leadership research. It actually started out as a research on learning, because Apple was trying to design tools for education market. And we knew that if we design computers and if we can hook young people onto Macintosh at that time, later into iPhones and iPads and some of them, that means those people, younger people, as they grow up, they will be connected with the user interface and also the overall Apple ecosystem. But to do that, you need to really think about what are the ways in which human beings learn. How do children learn? So we realized we need kinesthetic experience. That means the mouse design. Like for example, the traditional mouse, actually Doug Engelbart, who designed the mouse, he created it as a 3-button mouse. One for control, one for click, and one for something else. But he felt it was really complicated. Steve Jobs and his team, what the great thing they did is they identified again, why do you use a mouse? Yes, you can use it as a large number of things that can be done with it. It needs to allow you to use in a kinesthetic form. If you click it, you should be able to approach it. So they created a single button mouse. So that was a kinesthetic experience. And then when you move the mouse around, the length of the mouse movement, if it is parallel to the length of the screen or something else, then you don't have to look where you are going, you can actually do it. So that means there was a lot of research on what is called a kinesthetic learning, emotional learning, visual learning, auditory learning. There was a lot of research that was happening. And then we began to look at how human beings learn at a fundamental way. If we can understand it, then that allows us to not only, because learning is what you take in, then creativity is what comes out, leadership is what comes out, collaboration what comes out. All of these are what you might call outcomes. So ultimately, we realized if people are not being leaders, they end up being victim of other leaders. So, what I meant is they become followers of other leaders. Okay. But actually, majority of the time, opposite of leadership is actually victimhood. We end up being victims, especially Indians. We don't like somebody else to be leaders, right? So that is how I started. I started first looking at how people learn and learning as an input. What are the ways in which output comes? Creativity and innovation, leadership, and the impact, output, what you are generating. How can you have impact, transformation? These are 3 things that came out. Essentially, in the corporate sector, people loved to work on leadership. And I ended up getting more opportunities to do work on innovation and leadership than other areas. That's how I started.
So, in fact, I must say that already there are some comments and questions coming in, and it's interesting that many of our folks who are on call today are actually your students at one time. They've attended your programs in ISP, the 3-year leadership, 3-day leadership program that you do. So it's good to see them all and posting some lovely comments and thoughts. Of course, some questions also. But let me come back to what you just said about leadership. So with all this happening, why did you move on from Apple, and what inspired that move? Everyone wants to go to Apple, and here you decided to move on.
What happened was, to do this research on learning, I ended up partnering with a wonderful gentleman who still remains to be my good friend and a close friend, called Bill Atkinson. Bill Atkinson was the guy who invented the Mac Paint, and he is the one who did the quick draw routines that allowed graphical user interface on a Macintosh. And in addition to that, he is also the guy who created HyperCard and variety of them. He's an amazing guy. You should, any of you should actually Google Bill Atkinson and check it out. And he was one of very close friends and, at some level, mentor and close friend of Steve Jobs as well. And he continues to be pioneer in his late 60s in variety of things, in photography and all of that. He and I started looking at, and then we ended up interviewing like 17 Nobel laureates. We ended up interviewing like 200 extraordinary minds, CEOs, spiritual leaders, sports personalities, all kinds of people. Because we found out you cannot actually capture how people know how to lead or how to think or how to really create, because what they know is only tacit I mean, like a conscious part. There is a lot of stuff that happens in the tacit domain, in the unconscious part. So we started doing that research, and as I was doing it, I realized there is so much that is written in the Indian spirituality, in the Vedanta tradition, in and of course, it's also in Buddhism and Jainism as much. But because I came from a Hindu root, and I, was fortunate enough to learn Sanskritam, Sanskrit at a very early age, all of that came to bear when I was in Apple Computer, when we were looking at designing knowledge engines and artificial intelligence tools and intelligence agent. I found out there is something, like a methods of knowledge, a book that is about 2000 years old on Nyaya Sastra, on Nyaya Darsanam of Kapila, has got beautiful stuff. So as people were really looking at information and knowledge and data, I began to recognize the connection between the technology and spirituality, because 30 years ago, what we were doing as AI now is called AI because the technological hardware as well as horsepower is there. At that time, we were only looking at intelligent agents. Example of intelligence agents are like Siri, Alexa, all of them right now. But at that time, we were only envisioning them. And I realized Apple, while it was looking at the technology edge, I wanted to understand the human mind and understand how humans think and how we can design tools that help us to transcend some of it. And then that came in the intersection of science and technology, but many more in the context of spirituality. So I found that is the best way I can integrate India and the Indian wisdom, whether it is yoga or whether it is spirituality and Ayurveda, with the Western technology. And I became the bridge in my own vision. And I started working with India, and I started working with the United States after leaving Apple. That was in 1990.
Okay. So you've done a lot of research over 30 years on connecting the three. In fact, maybe now's the time for this question which has come up.
Sure.
What is, in your opinion, the essence of connecting Indian spirituality with leadership, especially in the technology space? How would you kind of summarize this connect?
The best way I can say that would be, in the technology space, we can do a lot. Many of the tasks that we do are repetitive tasks. Much of the pattern recognition, which we call intelligence, by the way, much of IQ, which we are really proud of, is mostly advanced pattern recognition. If we can see the pattern ahead of other people, that's what we call smartness and the IQ. So that pattern recognition can be done much better with AI, much better with computers. For example, chess can be played, superbly with the computer, and it is known for a long time. But only thing is, now with the deep learning, with the various kinds of AI programs that come in, many of the things that we can see using AI, we can see it much better, much faster, and with the neural networks, and with various kinds of big data, with the various intelligences that are given to variety of tools and products, and everything has got a internet connection right now, right? They are called IoTs, as you probably know. With all these things can be done. But what are human beings for? So, for example, with all the stuff that we have done, we are literally sitting in, the entire world has been brought to the knees by a 10, what you might call a nano centimeter size, or even nanometers, or even less. We don't know what, I don't exactly remember what the size of it is. But those things has brought us to our knees, and we don't know what to do. That means once you define a problem, once you know the pathway, technology can help. But defining what is appropriate and defining whether it is ethical, whether it is value-based, whether it is appropriate. I think those things, technology cannot make a decision. I think human beings still need it. So if we want to give direction, have clear intentionality, identify the values, set things to next level, I think the technology will have to listen to human beings. In the next 10 years, I think human beings will find subtler and subtler and more meaningful ways in which things can be looked at. Because, this is very clear, right? COVID could become something like a bio weapon. Somebody else could come up with some other virus, and then they can use it to blackmail the entire world for that matter. So what it means is, when we have these kinds of technology tools, unless we work together as a systemic, group way, in a holistic way, if we try to hide, if we try to do something else, what is good for some people will become a terror for some other people. So the values become extremely important. So these things, we need human beings to think. So there will be new jobs, new opportunities, new ways of doing than what we know. I think world is about to change significantly.
Oh, you mean thanks to COVID, it's likely to change, or this change was already upon us and COVID is just a tipping point? How do you see that?
What I see is COVID made certain realities that we have visualized, that we have done scenario planning to come to life. So now we know people can work from home. As a matter of fact, generally people have been saying they are on an average between 2 to 3 hours extra amount of work people are putting in when they are working from home. But people are getting burnt out working from home right now, whereas people wanted to work from home before. So like that, there are a variety of assumptions. Can you teach children through online? Can you connect with people online? Can you work from home? There are several different assumptions people have had are completely broken because COVID gave us an opportunity to test it out, including today being the World Environment Day in United States. Still, I know India, it was yesterday for you, but like looking at the way in which the environment opened up, how the greenness, how the Himalayas could be seen from 200 miles away, or how the ozone layer or anything else come in. So that means there is an opportunity for us to truly recognize that we have a bigger responsibility than just you and me and my bank balance and whatever is appropriate for my comfort and luxury. I think we are in this together. I can't just laugh at you that your side of the boat is leaking and I am doing very well. We are all in the same boat. I think that became crystal clear thanks to COVID.
Very interesting. Coming back to your own story, so you quit Apple and you started working on the synergy between technology, spirituality, and leadership. And then you coined this whole concept and idea of smart to wise. I thought smart was enough and I was working towards smart. So this was a humbling lesson. So can you tell me more about this journey?
Sure. I think as I a few minutes ago, I mentioned something about our smartness is about discovering patterns before other people discover. Like if I know, like Apple's stock was highest today, than ever. It has not only come back to 324 or whatever, it has touched $330. But if I were to know just a month ago that Apple will hit it this way from $240, which was like at the lowest a couple of months ago, to $330 is a pretty big, almost 50% return I would have gotten. Same thing with the Dow Jones Industrial Average, same thing with anything else. So the smartness is about recognizing what is coming up, the trends and the patterns and all of them, seeing various dots and connecting them ahead of time. That's what is essentially smartness is all about. I think that is very much necessary, and that is what gotten India to become an IT king in the world. But at the same time, the wisdom is when to use that smartness and when not to use that smartness. So, for example, if our President Trump is a great example of where he is incredibly smart and incredibly dumb in terms of wisdom, for the simple reason that many of the things that he does are extremely powerful. He knows how to navigate the conversation towards where he wants to go. He won the United States presidency and he is doing many things. He's a remarkable human being from the perspective of the ability to bring change. So he may not be traditionally smart. There are more number of people in the United States and in the world who may dislike him. But what is amazing is he was the change leader for a lot more things, and he knew how to use his smartness to get him to where he wants to go. But that also allows people to wake up and say, maybe I don't want to be like Trump. Maybe there are some things which I don't want to take away the funding from WHO, or, what you call get out of the G7, or to be able to say, everything is not my responsibility. It is somebody else. I think there is a lot of wisdom that if he can access it, I think he's smart enough to be able to access. Some people think smartness is against wisdom. No, it is like what you might call a smart plus plus. Knowing when to be smart, when not to be smart, when to make somebody else to be smart is actually the wisdom. Wisdom is not giving up smartness. It is just recognizing other people are also equally smart, and there is time for them to be leaders. There is time for them to be, in the forefront. Once I get that humility, then the agency, the ego that I have begins to play less of a role, and my smartness can be used for a larger good, for a larger purpose. I think that is where the humility and wisdom start out. That's what my book was about.
Very interesting. So on call are a lot of youngsters also, as I mentioned. So what message would you give to them for who are folks who are at the beginning of their careers? They have another 30, 40 years of productive life ahead of them. How would they begin to connect? They are very savvy with technology.
Right.
They are going to be leaders of the future, good or bad. But they also want to have a desire to connect with the spiritual side of leadership. So what are those 2-3 steps that they can begin to take now?
There are 3 things in my life I found are extremely valuable, and I believe they are timeless. Number 1, passion. From childhood, I was very passionate, and as you saw, based on my comment about President Trump, I saw you blink at the strength of my comment. I apologize if I would offend anybody there. But the key part is, when I'm passionate, I have a certain power. And that power, obviously, if it becomes excessive, it becomes intense. I become unavailable. I know that. But as long as I'm aware of my own passion, and I use a little bit of compassion to go with it, I think my passion can take me places my intelligence can never take. That is number 1. Follow my passion. Follow my instinct. Because 1990, when I quit Apple, when I started integrating spirituality, there are tons of stories I can tell. Like, for example, I was reading Bhagavad Gita at one time, 1991. I was trying to really understand certain aspects of it. I had a Bhagavad Gita comment, I had a small book along with me, and a couple of other people, we went to Procter & Gamble in the middle America, in Ohio. We went for a contract on leadership development there. And as I left some of the papers, along with my papers, I left my Bhagavad Gita there. And, in the afternoon, lunchtime, the manager, who was actually in charge of that, called me up and said, "Did you leave your Bhagavad Gita there? I know the conservative nature of the West. conservative nature of the Midwest, especially. And I really wanted to very badly say, no, that's not my Bhagavad Gita. I almost have lied. But then I said, there are only 3 people, and today, and I was the only Indian. If I were to say how blatantly, then I said, I need to own up to that. I said to him, yeah, I do, and I'm trying to read this, and I'm trying to do this. And he said, I can't find anybody else whom I can talk to. I also have a guru, actually, and I'm trying to figure it out. But I'm trying to reconcile between some of my Christian notion and Bhagavad Gita. I said, hey, wonderful. I'm actually part of a multi-religious group. We try to look at Janet, the, what you call various type of metaphors from there, and metaphors from Hinduism, metaphors from Judaism, metaphors from Islam. We try to compare and look at that. I love Rumi, I love some of this, but I'm a Hindu because that is what my fundamental learning is about. That doesn't make me less tolerant of it. Let's learn. And interestingly, for about 8 years, we had regular conversations. And of course, I don't have to say I got the contract as well. But the key thing was 1990, 1991, I had the opportunity. Same, so I can tell you stories like this where people were stunned that I was using the word spirituality or Bhagavad Gita. They thought I'm going to alienate people. But till now, for past 30 years, that was the most powerful thing. That's about passion.
Yeah.
The second one I found is essentially meaning. I found out there is a big difference between understanding and meaning. Understanding gives me enough for my intellect. I know the logic, I know the rationale, and I know the reason for why my parents wanted me to do something, my boss wanted me to do something else. But whatever meaning that I find from something, it connects with my own spirituality, my own value system, my own ethics. When I understand something, I have the logic for doing it. But when I have a meaning in it, then my emotional self will pull me through the logic to get it done. Even if it is completely illogical, I'm willing to be totally rational based on my beliefs, based on my convictions, and based on what gives meaning for me. So that is where the belief comes into picture. Second one is identify what is it that you deeply believe in and what gives you really meaning when you are lost and when you feel burnt out or when you feel struggling. Whatever gives you meaning, follow that, study that, take up opportunities or create relationships or spend time to follow passion and meaning. And the third and the little difficult one is the purpose. Make sure that whatever you do, you keep asking why. It is not just the what and how. That obviously what and how will get you how to, achieve what you want in the outcome. But ask yourself, why am I doing that? Why are you doing that? Sometimes you may have to go through 2 or 3 or even 4 whys before you discover your purpose. So if you can pay attention to passion, meaning, and purpose when you are young, these 3 will enable you to take whatever opportunity you have and for you to shine and develop your executive presence and build your brand, whatever language you want to put it in. You will show up as somebody special because most people fritter away their passion. They do what is supposed to be done rather than what they are passionate about. And they do what somebody else tells rather than what is meaningful. So those will help a lot.
Thank you. I think very good, powerful message here. What is, I see a question also coming. What is then the defining difference between meaning and purpose? Are they interchangeable, or how do you look at these two differently?
Sure. Excellent question, by the way. Meaning doesn't have to be purposeful all the time. Like a song, if an old Hindi film song that when I saw, with a dear friend of mine in my 10th standard, and if I think about it, or if we meet my old friend, we both singing that song, or thinking about going to that movie theater and eating pav bhaji outside, or eating something else and going for long walks, those give you meaning. That may not have anything to do with purpose, but that will bring my vulnerable, deeper, authentic self of who I am. My heart, my compassion, my love, my passion, all of them really come alive in one word called meaning. So meaning doesn't have to be future oriented, whereas purpose several times will give us the direction towards the future. By definition, by the way, purpose is noble. There is no such thing like a ignoble purpose. Any purpose that you look at, it is like saying, just like you ask, what is the purpose of a mango tree? If you say it is mangoes, you see, trees don't eat mangoes.
Yeah.
So that just like that, your purpose is not about you. You see, like I want that. I want to get there. I want to be a CEO and I want to run this. This has nothing to do with purpose. Purpose is always about how can you serve others? How can you serve the world? How can you and your life become meaningful to other people? That is your purpose. So meaning is what world gives to you. Purpose is how your life becomes meaningful to other people. I hope that makes it easy and easy to understand and follow.
Excellent. I think definitely helps. So another question that is now coming up uh, is there another deeper connection between technology, spirituality, and business as we are evolving,
Yeah,
especially in the 21st century where technology is so pervasive?
definitely. I think the business is like, like I used to say that in 1990s, at that time, it was like a really strange thing. I said, business is becoming like a temple for the society. People said, what nonsense are you talking about? Business is the most heartless. It's all about profit. It's all about me. It's all about greed. How can you say that? But look at right now, there is a conscious capitalism. One of the books that has a large amount of following. Raj Sisodia is one of the co-authors of it, and John Mackey, who created Whole Foods, had created. So the idea is bringing consciousness, like a conscious capitalism, is something that is possible because business has got a bottom line. That means it measures impact. It doesn't measure the process. It doesn't measure the input. It measures the output. What have you done? It doesn't matter how long you worked, how hard you worked, what did you produce? That type of a bottom line orientation is extremely necessary because sometimes we get mixed up when we say karmanye vadikaraste mapaleshu kadachana. When we read it in Bhagavad Gita, we have become a karma country. It's our karma that we are in that state. That's a different case to say it in that way. But another way to say it is it's all about, I do the process. I don't get attached to the result. Beautiful. But does it mean you have given up the result? Nobody said don't work for the result. They said you have to work for the result, but the result is not coming just out of your effort alone. You do your best to produce the result. And then other people will also, if you are a leader or if you are a manager, if you are a role model, if you are authentic, other people get inspired by your actions. They will work together to produce the result. Don't take the credit for all as you. So that means when you do not have authority for the outcome that comes in, that doesn't tell you, just say, I worked as hard, rest of it is not in my hands. That can be used as a fatalistic approach or something else. So I found business gives you the bottom line orientation. Number two, technology gives you the tools and approaches, methodologies like Ayurveda. When Charaka wrote it 2000 years ago, poor guy, at whatever was available at that time, he had created 30 chapters, remarkable Ayurveda medicine. But if you were to tell me you are an Ayurveda physician in 21st century I am only going to use the methodologies that Charaka has used, then I would say you are not fully leveraging whatever is available. If there is a CT scan that can help you, if there is a PET scan, if there is an ultrasound, use different methodologies. There is tattva of what Charaka has written has not changed, but the tools from the Western medicine integrate it, and then use the methodologies of Charaka. Plus, if there are some other things that can be added, integrate it and use it. So that means at some level, spirituality gives you certain deeper meaning, passion, but science and technology gives you tools and methods. And finally, business gives you bottom line. So we need all the three of them. When you integrate them, it is possible to ignite genius of you and me, or it can be India, it can be for an organization, we can do that. But if you leave any one of them, because technology people look at spiritual people and say, hey, when I get old, I'll get there. I'm not old enough. So they let go of the purpose and meaning. Spiritual people look at business people and say, oh, they are all greedy. They are only after money. But without recognizing, most of the time, people with spiritual, they go with a begging bowl most of the time. They don't use the resources they have. And finally, scientists and technologists sit in their ivory towers and thumb their noses at other two. But these three, when they work together, then that is a powerful recipe to ignite the genius within our country and within our world to create nuclear explosion, and whether it's the COVID time or beyond. I think these three are the ones that they don't combine together. We need to combine them in a meaningful way.
Beautiful.
That's what my passion has been for past some time.
So I want to come back to the earlier point you were making regarding purpose. What is your purpose in life, and how can one discover one's purpose?
My purpose in life, I found it changed a few times. Before I was in Apple, I used to even mistake purpose for my vision or for my goal in life. I used to think my purpose in life is my goal in life. That was the biggest mistake I made. But it got me to where I needed to. I was ambitious, I was creative, and I was hardworking. I could get to where I got to. Once I got to where I thought I needed to be, I found out it was very empty. I found out that money, position, power, being in one of the fantastic organizations, being fortunate with, wife and 2 kids, and then living in Silicon Valley, nice house, everything, I found out those are beginning. Those are the doorways to discovery rather than end goals. So then I realized when I help people, like you might want to think about the gift that you received will become old very quickly, or you will lose interest in it, sooner or later. But the gift that you give to other people, the contributions you make to other people are something that continue to give you joy and satisfaction, no matter how old you are. So I found my purpose in life is not about what is in it for me and what I can get, what I can contribute to other people. Because I was, and for whatever reason, ending up in Silicon Valley, and I had an opportunity to work with India and in the United States. So my purpose in life became, how do I integrate the best of India, whether it is Vedanta, whether it is Ayurveda, whether it is yoga, whether it is spirituality, whether it is whatever. I wanted to bring it to the West and make people to appreciate and value that. And similarly from the West, some of the marketing and technology and structuring and organizing, I wanted to be brought to India. That's the reason why in 1990 onwards, I've been spending 3 months a year in India so that I can learn from India as well as I can contribute whatever I learned in the West so that it can become a mutually meaningful. And that has been my life's purpose. I looked at myself as a bridge and I wanted to contribute to the last minute whatever I can for integrating and making 1 plus 1 becoming 11. That is what I have been attempting to do. That's my purpose in life.
Wonderful. So how do we begin to discover our purpose, or how do we begin to get onto the journey where I can be as clear as you are today of what the purpose is?
Many of the times, if obviously you have to go through multiple iterations for purpose. As I said to you, you have to find why you are doing it, not at the level 1, but at maybe level 3, level 4, level 5. Because first, what you find as a purpose is very superficial. It is given by somebody else. So, for example, I used to do this transformational leadership. I know some of them are in this, what you call webcast right now. So, we used to start with certain things about create your life map. Where are you in life? What are your goals? We created a collage. We looked at where we are, where we want to be. Okay, good. Once you get that, then what? Because your collage will only give you what you want to get. But you may also know how you are going to get there. But why do you want it? Why is that people need to come to you? Oh, because I'm the best. Okay. How do you know you're the best? Look at other people. And then I found out there was another interesting thing. When in Silicon Valley, a few years ago, two groups of people, like Cisco and HP, both laid off, because at some particular time period. And then when I went to give a talk, there were about 20 executives who were all vice president and senior vice president level. Those are the people from Silicon Valley, not just HP and Cisco, but from many other companies. They're all looking for general managers of a billion-dollar, what you might call a organization, or multi-billion-dollar business units. They want to head it up. But I asked them questions. Okay, how many of you have got masters? Many hands that went up. How many of you have got MBAs? Many hands went up. How many of you have got it from Stanford or MIT or Kellogg or Wharton? Again, many hands went up. How many of you led a $100 million or a $500 million business unit? Most of the hands went up. How many of you led 1,000 people, 10,000 people? Most of the hands went up. Then I asked them, just in this room, there are over 10 to 20 people who have same thing which everybody aspires for. Now, if all of you apply for a job, how are you going to differentiate yourself? Then they realize sometimes, oh, I work with scout and guides, or I work with big brothers, or that means suddenly the non-profit activities, what they contribute, how they are connected to society became very important. That means, again, not what you got, but what you give pays a lot more. So that was first level. Then they started doing, oh, I do this, I'm on the boards of so many non-profits. But actually, which one do you spend most amount of time, even though you have no recognition, nothing else? Then they looked at a little bit deeper. Out of all the non-profits, which one of them commits? And then where do you, not a checkbook charity, you giving money, where do you spend your time and energy? That is the next level that comes in. So that means you are connected to some people. Find out who they are. They are the people whom you serve. How do you serve them? When you serve them, how will they benefit? What is unique about your contribution to them? And like that, if you can begin to discover what is it that you can bring, you being uniquely in the position that you are, to people whom you love at a much deeper and deeper level, in that dialogue, you begin to flow, and suddenly you find out, this is what I do. When I do it, I lose track of time. I'm so passionate. More amount of time I spend, I'm actually coming away with more energy. So that means energy, passion, timelessness, commitment, joy, contribution, outcome, wherever all of these are coming together, that is your purpose.
That's the purpose. Very well said. Prasad, a lot of questions coming in. One question is about 10 years from now, let's say 2030. what is leadership going to look like? You talk about COVID being kind of a defining moment in our lives on world. What is leadership going to be, and how do we move toward that?
My sense is leadership is a very different word than leadership.
Mhm.
So far, leadership has been more about leaders than leadership. Okay. So the individual leaders, whether it is about, like, we used to call MBA, means Masters in Business Administration. So people used to be called administrators. Like even in hospital now, we call them
Yeah.
administrators. Or in IAS, Indian Administration Service. Then 1950s, 60s, 70s, it became management. Oh, I am part of the management team of the company. It is the managers became more important than administrators. And then came leadership. Now is the leadership word is in vogue. My sense is somewhere along the path we'll find something more, recognizing that a true leader 10 years from now is a person who develops at least 10 leaders around them who are on the shoulders of he or her. That means I don't develop followers. Like take Lee Iacocca. He was a great leader when he was leading Chrysler. But the Chrysler fell apart when he left.
Yeah.
Does it mean he was a leader? That means if you leave an organization where there is more capacity for the organization, there are more number of leaders. Another way of saying, you have built leadership in the organization, you have built a capacity for leadership in the organization, and it continues to evolve. For example, when Steve Jobs died, everybody said, Apple is going to go down. There will be no innovation. There will be nothing. But look at where Apple is now. It is like 3 times more valuable than when Steve Jobs was. And nobody says Tim Cook is anywhere near Steve Jobs, nor he is trying to be Steve Jobs. So that means leadership is a collective. It's a field. We need to establish a field of leadership rather than an individual leader. I think the concept 10 years from now will be about how do we develop those fields of leadership. We call, in Bhagavad Gita, they call it Kshetra and Kshetragna. Kshetra means like a field, like a space. Leadership is about creating a space for people to step into, take accountability, and what you might call a certain amount of responsibility, so that some things get done that would not be possible for you to get done. So to a certain extent, my sense is 10 years from now, there will be more of how do we create the organizational cultures, organizational fields in which leaders develop. Similarly, mentorship is going to be extraordinarily important. I think how do we mentor younger people at multiple levels of the organization, in other organization and in society, so that they can grow on the shoulders of my experience and my learning, so that they don't have to go through everything other people have done. How can we get them to leapfrog their limitations so that they can depend upon my capability? So that older people mentoring younger people, so that together we can grow. Like, the concept of mentor has come. A mentor becomes an intern, and an intern becomes a mentor. Like that mentor is a word chip. There is a friend of mine who wrote a book, Wisdom at Work. And Chip Conley is a guy who wrote several books. He's the guy who mentored in Airbnb, the young guys in their 20s and 30s. He mentored them, and he really created an opportunity for them to create Airbnb to become one of the large, wonderful companies. So the idea of leadership is going to be turned upside down. It is about how can I get people below me to do much beyond me, and how can I create a powerful field in which people say, if you are in that context, you get mentored, you get developed, and you can do extraordinary things that you didn't even know that you are capable of doing. That's the kind of leadership I'm excited about. That's the kind of leadership that we need to develop.
Fantastic. We are running short of time, but I have some lovely questions here. One is from a current sitting CEO who's actually been into one of your programs also. And the question is, how about here and now? What is leadership really for us today, here and now, when we want to rebuild our businesses after a shutdown? What is really required of us?
What is mostly required of today is to recognize it is not the tools that will do it, it is the people who will do it. First, show some empathy, compassion, get your team, whoever are in your organization, to work together, empower them to see what is missing, what is needed to open up the economy, to do the best service they can, to create the best products which they can in the shortest possible time. Don't try to tell them how to do it. Don't give them strategy to do it. Give them enough energy. You give them like a power pill in them to feel like they are CEOs of their own fiefdom, their own organization, and tell them that I would like to see each one of you behave as if you are the CEO of your life, your organization, and your customer. Try to do the best you can. I think the idea
Very
of
well said.
getting people to take ownership and accountability for what they are creating, I think that kind of unleashing innovation and creativity in people and ownership in people is going to be the fastest way you will be able to get the economy open up and your company to churn along very, very well.
There's another comment and a question coming in, of course, that I attended your 3-day program at ISP, and it was really life-changing for me. Okay, and the question is, how do you keep yourself gainfully busy these days? And do we get to see you run a program in India again in the near future?
I don't see myself running a program in the near future, for the simple reason that over time, past 30 years, I found more of a teacher. I forgot what it is to be a learner. I think I have developed a large amount of facade, and I think I created layers of arrogance and layers of what you might call believing in my own marketing and believing in my own arrogance. I think I need to go be a student, and I need to reconnect with my soul, my family, and my spirituality, and really get something from inside out. And I think till I do that, I have no interest in leading other people. So I would rather see what I can learn.
I can only say you're too modest, I think. Another interesting question which has come up is, and this is from a young listener here who's saying that sometimes in business, talking about spirituality is a kind of anathema. It's you don't go and talk about spiritualism or religion, and business is trying to get away from it. How do you get over that idea of trying to keep spirituality totally away? In fact, I understand in US they're trying to remove some words which are related to religion out of their national anthem also. So how do you get over that?
I have been doing it for 30 years. It worked for me. And all along for past 30 years, people said the same thing. You can't use the spirituality, you can't use the word religion. I remember in 1993-94, Alan Mulally was running the 777 program in Boeing before he became the CEO of Ford. And he was the general manager. And then I was a consultant for Boeing. And they asked me to evaluate something. And then I went to their project review meeting of Alan Mulally. I sat in for the 3-hour project review. At the end of it, he asked me, hey, what is your experience of this project review meeting? I was really touched how much connection there was, how their principles by which they were working, how they had even Singapore Airlines, their first customer in the room. There were no secrets, total transparency. I stood up and said, the experience for me today was really spiritual. It was very powerful. There was a total silence in the room. Like people were just looking at, I thought maybe I did something wrong or something else. But then I continued. I made a couple of minutes comments and I sat down. At lunchtime, then Alan comes running and he said, "You don't know what you did today." I said, "What? You used the word yes word." I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "You used the word spirituality." And he said, "You just opened up a door in the room, because people don't have permission in the corporate scenario to talk about spirituality. Suddenly now people found more meaning in their work,
Yeah.
more commitment to what they are doing. Suddenly people understood why we do certain things. There were a couple of people who were crying. From then onwards, it was like suddenly
A
something
different
just,
world.
out of the bottle. So my sense is, don't listen to all this BS people tell you, oh, don't talk spirituality, don't talk religion. Of course, don't talk for getting something. If you are passionate, if that is appropriate, if it is contextual, don't put down somebody, don't be intolerant, be inclusive, but be honest and authentic to what comes out.
Absolutely.
And then I think the magic has an opportunity to come out. Not all the time it will work out well. I promise you that. Yes, not all my paths were, beautiful roads, but I feel like I am where I am because God, spirit, consciousness, whatever you want, gave me courage to say what I felt was appropriate, and then recognize that I am not the one who is making it happen. There is a lot of grace in my life, a lot of good fortune in my life, and I'm thankful for all those wonderful people who made that happen. I think those two helped me significantly more than anything else.
I think your message of authenticity, I think, is coming very truly, and I think your life also exemplifies that. Prasad, this has been so wonderful. I lost track of time, and we are already overshooting it. But thank you so much. Really appreciate this. A lot of comments coming from your students, from people who have attended many of your programs. Some have read your books and blogs, and one of them, Ashok, is mentioning about your concept of true north, which you
Yeah.
shared with him at ISP several years back. And he still feels that he's following that. Same comment coming from Debashish also. Really appreciated, Prasad. Maybe we need to have more of these sessions with you to really absorb your message. Thank you so much. To all the listeners, thank you so much for joining us today. Of course, a video recording will be made available, and I'll also include a link to Prasad's website, so that if you need to know more about his thinking and his writing, you can reach it there. Thank you so much, Prasad, and thank you, everyone. So nice of
My
you.
pleasure.
Thank you.
My pleasure to
Prasad.
engage with you and
Thank
have
you.
this wonderful chat. Thank you for making it happen, Vimal. And
Thank
you have
you.
a great weekend, all of
Thank
you.
you. You too, Prasad. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Namaste.
Bye-bye. Thank you.